What's up, everybody? How are you doing? I hope you had a good day so far. So, we've got the spells that we've created, right? We have simple things that I've done, like the spell this morning. So, that was just grind down the herbs and light them on fire and speak over them. As the spirit changes, the effect changes, right? And so, as we get into spellcraft and as we go a little bit deeper over the next couple of weeks, it's going to be not just everyday magic, not just grind down the herbs, but we're going to have a little bit more intent put behind it. So that way there can be some more traction given to what we're up to. And so the things that I'll do for the next couple of weeks, I've got 5 more weeks planned out for the spell of the day. And after that, I'm thinking, let's do a little bit deeper into practical application and focusing in on really what specific things that we can get done as far as our spells go, right? Because the dictionary definition of a spell is anything that changes the environment in accordance with an overwhelming force, right? That overwhelming force in this case has to be your will or has to be the intent, right? Intent plus desire, direction. What's it going to do? Where's it going to go? What's the narrative going to be? And then the release. What is the release? Is it scattering it? Is it blowing it? Is it, different things? And so as we go through and as we deal with this sort of thing, right, you can have spell powders, like the herbs and the stuff that we do every day. You grind it down and you put a little in your hand, and then you blow in the direction of the individual. That works best for types of wishing magic, things that you're trying to scatter out there so that the energy disperses and then comes back and you get what you need. Okay. The bay leaf spells are great for that. You just light them on fire and it links you to the desire that you have when you burn the leaf, right? It could be linking a spell to a person, such as the case of the other day in the videos with Rex and linking the spell of transformation to him specifically instead of the general area, right? And then you have the next level of opportunity, right? You've got what Wiccans call is cast the circle, okay? That's a ritual space that you've cultivated that you're dividing from the normal world. Your circle is where the rest of the world is not. You're creating a fixed place where that shit doesn't happen, okay? You don't need to do this when it comes to spellcraft. You only should do that if you're going to be invoking entities, evoking entities, conjuring things that don't necessarily exist on the plane of the everyday. Just around the same kind of vibage that you get in a space with the chi and the flowing of all the energy that moves through things, there's energy that passes through objects. Radiation is an example of this, right? Where it can pass through different types of energies. It can go through lead. It can go, or some of it can go through lead. Most of it doesn't. So, you can create a temple space or what have you where energy doesn't flow. But the point is that you've understood that energy is moving through your space. Energy is moving through the structure of your spellcraft, right? And so when you make a spell's totem, right, or a spell jar, the energy moves through it, and then it does what it needs to as far as connecting you to your energy pub, right? Connecting you to the great energies that exist externally to yourself. And so what we do, at least what I do, and what I recommend you do, is you build spell anchors, right? Spell jars. Common things to have. Every witch loves jars. I haven't met a witch who doesn't. Because you put God knows whatever into it, right? These have a structure to them. They're not just random ingredients, right? These have quartz powder. They have copper. This one has copper because it relates to Venus. It's got the sunstone that's attached to it, so that keeps energy from becoming corrupted. It makes the energy light, so to speak, right? And light penetrates everything, right? It's the radiation. It's the principle of what the sun actually is doing out there, right? It's not just a ball of heat. It's a radiation thing. It's all penetrating, right? Like there's types of radiation that comes off of that, which gets sent out through space. It's the magnetic field around the Earth that keeps us as living beings from getting nuked when the solar flares happen, right? It'll fuck up our communications because we're using light-based technologies, or at least we should be, right? We're using vibrational waves, we're using vibratory technologies. If we were using light-based things, it would be moving a lot faster. So that's the thing. Now, you have these different technologies that we're using. You have the free energies that are moving around the vessel when you're not using it, right? When it's just sitting here on the shelf, it's a jar of dirt, right? Yay for the jar of dirt. Now, what does the jar of dirt do in relation to other things? How can you apply it in a better kind of way? And so what we can do is we can look into different applications of what it is we want to accomplish. And focusing in on Venus, for example, right? There are subdivisions that we can do. So I'll put this here. And so what do those subdivisions look like? The subdivisions are, you could do something with the Earth, right? You could do something with the heavens. You could do something with, like this one. There's a spell jar that links the heaven door of Venus, right? So I would put that in the northmost space. And so in my locations, that direction is north. So this would go to the north, right? And so I would then go and find the human door of Venus, right? This would go to the east. Why would it go to the east? Because it's coming into this world like the rising sun comes into this world, right? So that goes into the east. And then we have the earth door of Venus, right? Where does this go? This goes into the south. Why? Because we're on Earth. Everything that we're doing comes down into the Earth. And then we have the ghost door. Now, why do we divide it out to the ghosts, right? It's because that is where energy comes from. That is where our spirit goes as it goes to the west. As the sun sets, as our life sets, etc., 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 and off into the world it goes. And so we have this application of creating anchors. And so if I can get the camera to stay put, nope, stay put, camera, stay put. Nope, it's just really not liking me at the moment. So that is an example of what it does. So I apologize, everybody, if I can make, so that goes there, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. And this grid becomes the foundation of certain kinds of work, right? And now if you want to enhance this kind of work, you can add crystals to it, right? There's a really great book of grid magic that you can use to position. What is your focus stone? What is your stone of desire? What is your anchoring stone, right? Well, you can substitute the anchoring stones for where the energy comes from and originates by using spell jars that you add correspondences into. And so how do the correspondence jars work? How are you using these as opposed to external intermediaries, right? Well, instead of lighting a candle all the time, you can just pull out a jar and you have that effigy of the celestial energies, right? And so what you do is you can then use your sacred geometry grids, spread out your piece of paper and draw it with the sacred ink, right? The sacred ink in this case being anything that's mixed with the herbs, the stones, the minerals, the animal parts, your blood if you want to, depending on what it is, to create that grid. And you're focusing the manifestation down. You're creating a singularity that exists because you intend it to, right? And then because you have the generic application of what is the stone, mineral, animal part, augmentative things that you can add into these primary jars, these supplemental ones fall into place. And so when you do things like speak the conjuration of the gates and the grimoire of arts, right? What that allows you to do is it allows you to awaken outside of yourself the energy that is most like that gate which you are opening, right? In this case, the Atime Petu Babka Anaharani Alaktasalatarat The gatekeeper, open the way to me, the road whose course does not turn back. Open the gate of Venus here before me, right? As you speak that, for me, the energy moves up and out my arm into the space in front of me. Because of the fact that I've got the anchor here, it projects, you can almost, it's squishy. It holds that energy in place. It keeps it there. So you don't have to keep thinking about, okay, well, how do I do this for everything else, right? And so you go through and around your circle, the space where you're doing your spell work, right? You can put this configuration of the 4 subdoors to Venus in one location. You can then do the 4 subdoors of the other planets going around. And then you put the big red jars down here for time, either inside the circle that you're doing, if you're going to create an event for something, or outside if you're going to be causing a manifestation of a thing inside of an event. Like you would either do it inside of time or outside of time, depending on what it is you need. And so depending on where it is that that jar flows, where is the energy flowing to, right? Is this something that you need to have happen to somebody else for whatever purpose? You would put those anchors, those mediums, into the center of the space around the totem, right? So say, for example, I wanted to bless my coffee, right? I'm going to put this on the inside, which would be here. And then I would put one of these in the circle around. So there is between me and the gate that I just opened, the planetary or the astrological anchor, so that it exists in a form of time. There is a control for it because it is the closest to me. Now, if I was going to use the coffee to bless an effect for a person because it's external to me, I would have it where this would be on the far side, right? Because I am projecting from me into the 4 gates, into time, into that person's intermediary in front of me. So when you're doing stuff for yourself, you would do it closest to you in your proximity. If you're doing it for somebody else, you would do it further away because you have to go through those aspects of individuality. You have to go through those aspects of the time, the month, the hour, the day, whatever it is. You have to project through the gates, through time, into them. So it's a pinpoint location wherever they're at on the planet. So that way you have your full manifestation already set and ready. Now, this is why the correspondence books are so important, right? Is because if you can anchor down your spell ingredients to the principal arrangements, right? The planets, the astrological forces and things like that, and you start compressing what those are, you can hold these in your hand and you can meditate with these. So that way you can think about, okay, well, what does the heaven door of Venus feel like? And then you can put it before you and you can project your hands on either side of it and you run the energy through your body, right? Or you want to do it in sequence, right? What happens when the energy moves from the gates of the 4, right? From the regions of the 4, right? This would be the regions of the 4, right? It's not an elemental thing. The elemental things talk about conditional behaviors, right? That is the way that the earth feels when you use Venus. It's the way that the air moves when you're using Venus. It's the way that the water becomes when you use Venus, right? The water of life, right? The earth of life, the fertile earth, the vital breath, the fire of the individual life. So using those kinds of things, you can arrange or disperse. And depending on how good you are and how much preparation you've had in your training and your awareness, you can either see the visible like rift of energy that flows, or you put your hand on it and it wants to push back. Again, it's in the 1800s, they called it pneumia. It's like a magnetism, right? It's the substance of magic, whereas it'd be the ectoplasm of the ghosts, right? It would be the thing that the ghosts are made out of. In this case, it's the 18th century or 17th century concept of pneumia, the 1800s, right? 19th century. Sorry, it's 1 year, it's 1 century above, right? So in the 1800s, you've got a lot of things that are talking about how to cultivate Numia, how to, like, environmental situations. Like if you go to the graveyard, right, you bury something in the graveyard, it takes on the aspects of the graveyard. You bless it, you consecrate that object or whatever it is, and it assumes the role of death in that case, right? So that means whatever you put in then becomes either attracted to death, or it uses something that's dead and it pulls it into that vessel, and then it gives it a new purpose, a new type of life, right? And so this is really common. Like if you read the Forbidden Rites book, it's a book of necromancy. Okay. And in that, they talk about putting a ring into a crypt for 7 days. You go every day to the graveyard and you pray and you bless the ring and you leave it in the graveyard, and it's supposed to attract 7 different spirits, right? The idea is that then you put the ring on and it possesses the body with those different spirits, so that every day that the body can seem like it is dead, or it can seem like it's alive, and that spirit inhabits the body even though it's not their body specifically. That's what it's supposed to do. Now, just because those rites are written doesn't mean they actually work, right? Doesn't mean, like, the stuff in the old days is like, yeah, it's written down for history, but not all history is good history. Like, yeah, just because the book survived doesn't mean the spell actually worked, or just because it didn't go in the same kind of way that people were expecting it to, right? And so you have to think, are you creating a situation in which your energy anchors, your spell's totems, are going to be the most effective, right? When you cast a spell, you're releasing your intent. And how you release that intent into the world, again, it could be very, very basic. It could just be saying a desire to a candle, blowing out the candle. That's as simple as that. You can carve the candle. You can put a sigil into the candle of the individual you're working for, or the thing that you want. You can then roll that in herbs. You can then speak to it in some poetic verse, right? You can then use the ritual space and divide it out from this dimension, right? You create the circle, right? You can do that, or you don't have to do that. You can then go into, as crazy as I've gotten, and get all these anchors made. So that way, when you talk about creating a circle, it becomes a literal space made of all of the necessary anchors, so that there's no misunderstanding of what it is you're doing in your awakening in your work, right? So then it becomes a matter of grid placement. Do you use the principal planetary anchor in the 4 subregions as a flow around, or are you using them in tandem with each other, so that the primary thing you're doing is to strengthen the planetary aspect, or are you trying to enhance one of these aspects, right? It needs to come from Venus, yes, but it could be the center point could be the heaven of Venus. It could be the idea of the divine life, right? Or you could use the sphere of time. You could use other things as well, such as stones, bones. You could use live animals. I'm not talking about animal sacrifice. I'm talking about, you could literally put a rabbit in one area, a snake in another area, a dog in an area, and a cat in an area, right? And you could use those and the life that they lead to bless and make your magic, so that you could, you don't give it off to the wild, not anything that's, you go trap it in the wild and then you go let it go in the wild, right? That becomes ethical, right? That becomes illegal in certain places. But that's some of the spells that I've seen before. Like, they would trap an animal, bond the spirit to it, put the spirit into the animal, and then release it off into the woods. So that carries that shit out into the world, right? You could do that with, again, you don't do it the modern day. You don't do it with birds and shit like they used to, but that was a thing too. So again, you got to think around, how does this spell release? How does the energy get from you to your target to the effect you're trying to conjure? So as you go through, and as you develop your spellcraft, and as you develop your methodologies of release, it's all about the movement of energy. Like last night, I was doing the 2-part spell of smudging, right? Well, it's not smudging technically. It's the incense magic, right? Scent magic, smokes, right? And so using the smoke, you can purify space. You can release the individual's pneumia, in this case, from their body using a certain type of smoke that is a purgative. It forces an astral projection or projection of the body. Usually that has the fly agaric in it or something that causes that type of spirit release, which again becomes very dangerous if you're not in a setting where that is an acceptable use of that ingredient, right? That's what it's designed for, right? Like if you're going to go visit the shamans down in Brazil or the Amazon or wherever it is you want to go, you're going to go and deal with the shamans. They're going to give you drugs. Those drugs screw with your understanding of reality. Gives you a clearer picture, right? The clearer your picture is when it comes to interacting with the world, the more anchored you can become. And the more you understand that the linear expression of time isn't so much a 1-step, 2-step, 3-step, 4-step process. It's only 1 through 4 when you do every single step in sequence. Because it's like energy moving through a lock, right? So think about your clock gears that have to keep time accordingly. They keep moving in the rotation of everything, every single thing into a precise moment of interaction, right? So too is it with magic, right? It's a systematic clock on top of which you're using sacred geometry, the movement of the stars to lock in the energy from over here with the energy from over here, from the energy up here with the energy down here. So you are literally creating in a 3-dimensional space the compression of that energy. So when you go to release it and it hits the world's aura or the genus Loki or whatever spirit it is that you're using, out goes the energy, right? And so you can use something like a fan, right? And you can spread it, right? Or you could use something like a sword and stab at it. Or you can use a wand, project at it, right? The thing is, like with wand usage, right? Wands are an extension of the nature's tree or the world's trees, right? It's the birthplace of sylphs, the air spirits. So your wand becomes a birthing chamber of energy. And what you can do with it is you can hold it in your hand and speak to the spirit of that. And then out it goes. And then it'll serve you in the way that you need. Or you can create a different kind of approach. Instead of having a wand that you're using to direct your personal energy, you're using it to channel celestial energies external to your own as a focus. So when you put your energy into it, it starts to pull that other energy through and therefore focuses it on the target of your effect, right? It becomes the sniper scope to what your intent is. And when you use it or you wave it around, you actually are moving it through the pattern or the sigil of what your spell looks like, so that it takes the energy from over here to the energy that's over here to the energy that's over here, loops it and bonds it, and then out it goes. So the pattern that your wand moves in matters, right? What you say, why you say it, how you speak it, all of that matters when you're trying to go for precise manifestation. If you're just trying to conjure up the basics of getting a spell to work in the first place, you don't need to know all this. If you're trying to go for precision, if you're trying to cause an event to occur the way that you want it to occur, and you want it to be just so, just ever so much, bam, off it goes. That's what we can do. That's how you can think about it, because the more strategic you are in what singular energy you can bring to manifest, the more precise your spells become, the less error you experience, the cleaner the manifestation, and the more enjoyable the magic becomes. Because if you can make things happen the way that you want them to go, you don't have to worry about shit going sideways on you, right? So the more that you can focus down and you can go through every single step. All right, what is the compression of the ingredients that I'm going to use? What is the form that they're best served in? What is the narration that connects all of those things? Am I using it on this plane? Am I using it on other planes? Am I trying to affect a spirit while it's in its body? Right? The individual's behavior is the spirit of their physical body. You have to dislodge that from their body to get the spell to work at them, because their physical body has a will to be itself that overrides what the spirit inside it wants. Like it just wants to be comfortable. It doesn't care about personal development, doesn't care about growth, etc., etc. So you have to override that. Your will has to be stronger than the base urges of the animal body, right? And so by being able to do that, you can project your thoughts and consciousness into animals, into humans, into spirits. It's when you connect that like to like sympathy, as the spirits behave, so you behave, right? You behave like them, they take residence inside you, and it does become a temporary possession. Like that's also a thing, right? It could be a full-on possession. Like if you ever watch the stuff that the dervishes get up to, or like the voodoo horse people, like when they're horsing for the Loa, right? There's a really great book. It's The Divine Horsemen, The Living Gods of Haiti. It's a really amazing book on voodoo, and it talks about it. And it talks about how they anchor their spirits, and they talk about the different ways that those come about, right? And so everything, again, they keep it all very secret, because it outside ears, it seems a little wacky. It seems like it couldn't possibly work, but it does. At the end of the day, it does. It's effective. And so you have to go through and you have to think, okay, are you approaching magic as a scattergun? I just want something to stick. I am so desperate to know that this stuff exists. I just want something weird to happen, right? Okay. Do it that way. Boring, right? Or you can sit there and you can go through and say, like, okay, this is the candle I'm going to use. These are the symbols I'm going to put on the candle. These are the words that I'm going to say. And then I'm going to use a candle, and then I'm going to use a totem. A totem is going to be made out of animal stuffs, dried skins. You can get, like leather. You could use claws. You could use bones. You could use stones, ground up or whole. You could use herbs. You could use trees, all the different stuff, right? And so when you're doing these things, right, you get that opportunity to determine for yourself, how do these things relate? How does the candle's light, the color, the stuff I've carved into it relate to the totem in front of me, right? Is the candle the stimulating color, or is it the drawing in color? Is the candle going to get the gate energy of the element of fire, for example, in unison with the air, the earth, the water? Is the moving wax the physical body of the candle, the heat that comes off of it, right? And the fire itself is the thing that is lit. So then you have to think about, all right, so that's the fire gate. And then this is the physical construct. Again and again and again it's used, right? So that energy and this energy are similar, right? Well, then how do I get that energy and this energy to link to the thing that I'm trying to do, right? You pull it down. How do you pull it down? You have to use words. You have to use gestures. You have to use your physical body in a type of yoga, which means action, right? I'm not saying you have to study yoga. It's great if you do, but it is a type of action. The mantra is the type of energy, or the yantra is the form of the energy in motion. It's going. It's got the form, it's got the energy, it's got the material, it's got everything you need, and it's going to be, boom, released, right? And so the more aware you are of the subtle energies, this is why you should spend your time, at least a little bit each week, connecting to a different element, And they're going to be really boring videos, but if I start going live in the morning and doing let's meditate on the fire, and I get a candle, and we just sit there. I'll sit there on the camera and just be meditating. I'm not saying anything. And you watch it, you sit there with me if you want to, and then we'll have a conversation after. But the thing is that it's not about you doing it alone, right? Like if I'm doing it on camera, what does that help for you? Well, it means that, hopefully you'll sit there and do it with me, right? It's that you're doing it, that you do this in your life, that you bring these energies into your life, and that you know how you behave as a result of these energies. So when those energies are cut off, when those energies are scattered, you can recall them back to yourself. When they are projected out so far into creation that you have to sit back and you have to think, okay, well, how do I want these energies to recharge me, right? And so if you need to be recharged by them, sit in a circle of your ingredients, right? Put your claws for the earth things, you put your feathers for the air things, you put your poisonous things for the fire or whatever it is, like the salamanders, like lizards and snakes and shit. Venomous things like dead venomous things, or in a box, like don't get stoned, don't hurt yourself, don't kill anything that's gonna get you into prison, don't do that, fish, what have you, for the water, right? And so as you think about these things, as you figure out how they relate to you, how do you behave when you're working these energies, right? And so spells are anything that you will be able to channel your direct will into, right? Magic is the thing that changes the environment in accordance with your will. So what is it you do, be it conversations with the ingredients, conversations with your patrons, conversations with your friends that you're doing work with, right? What's the stuff that actually moves the environment into form that'll allow you to use other concepts, like the gates, like creating space where the world folds, right? Well, how does the world get to fold? The more dense the understanding of the energy is, the more of a bubble that there is. And inside that bubble, you can crack it open like an egg, and out from it gets to be pulled the energy that you need, because it is a focus for all that energy that you can then pull a single thread out and make it refined, and you can make it weave the pattern that you need, right? You can literally make the threads of the tapestry of life if you compress down absolutely every single thing along that chain, so that way this is the herb, this is the plant, this is the plant's behavior in life, like this is why it's important, this is the tree, this is the minerals, this is the animals, this is you, this is your subjects, this is all of the thing that you're doing to create that alignment. So every single thing is accounted for, because the more you can account for those variables, the more you can include them in your work, the better your spells become, the more effective they become, the faster they manifest. Because if you've got something that does not include an environmental situation, then you don't know what environment that spell might manifest in, right? You don't know, will this be the thing that works? Will this be the thing that doesn't work, right? Because you don't know. You didn't plan for it, right? And so the better you can plan for it, right? Like, what is the description of the expected manifestation? What is your component selection? What are the components used and why? What is your post-spell report's observations? When was the manifestation's date? When did it end? What happened to the environment? What happened to the people around the subject in relation to the work, right? What happened to the subject? What happened to the changes of the subject? What was the thing that caused that manifestation actually to happen? What event took place, and was it in accordance with what you wanted to do? What did you use to cause the effect? What ingredients would you otherwise do, right? Why did you cast the spell? What emotions did you feel? What did you do during the casting? What did you feel during the casting? What if you feel after the casting, right? What did you eat? What did you drink? What did you do after? What did you drink after? Did you drink water? Did you drink soda? Were you drinking alcohol? What were you doing? These kinds of things, if you can ask yourself and you can create those post-spell records, Guys, that's where you get better. When you can start planning out all of your spells and all of the things that you get up to and all of the different stuff, you get really specific. What's up, Mike? I appreciate that. Thank you very much, man. So, I've been going on about 35 minutes now about all the different ways you can cast a spell and the different compressions that you should think about as you go through and you work your way up to making the spell jars for the planets or the time or the correspondence or whatever it is. But that's the thing, is if you've got your basic ingredients and you put them together in a jar, right, you can make magic happen, right? Now, if you're doing those things like the honey jar and you're putting a candle on top, or the sour jar and you're putting a candle on top, like in hoodoo, right? That's slow burn magic, right? It's slow. It's molasses. It's not going anywhere anytime soon, right? There's no action to it. So I use them in a different way. I use the spell jar to take the constant energies, the things I'm always going to use that are going to stay the same. That's what I put in a jar. The stuff that changes is the stuff that's going to be lit on fire, the stuff that links to that individual's personal effects, the stuff that is going to be for that specific entity or spirit or spell or whatever it is. That's the stuff I put in a totem to give it focus. And so the stuff that never changes and the stuff that constantly changes, right? So this is where we get rites versus rituals. Rites are the rituals that you combine with a spell. What are they? They're always things that you can do. Open the gates using your anchors. Open the gates using the words. Open the gates using seals, using candles, using water, using fire, using dirt, using incense. Those are your constant things that you do. That becomes a ritual action. But what you do in your spell, lighting it on fire, putting whatever herbs or ingredients into it, whatever it is that you're doing in right then, that's a once-off. You should only ever have to do that once, and it should be so compressed that when that energy ripples, it then hits, energetically speaking, the anchors that you have, projecting that energy back out into the world. So what you've pulled in then releases. It's a compression and release. It's a twofold manifestation, right? It'll ripple out through the ingredients, right? I believe Trevor in the Brotherhood of Witches the other day says it's the collective cesspool of energy, right? And it was really funny how he said it, but it's the general world, right? You've divided your magic so much from all of the outside creation. If you've cast a circle, you created a temple space or whatever it is, doesn't matter. You don't have to. If you're using fixed anchors like this will pull in the energy for you, so you don't have to worry about, walking around in circles and saying whatever words you want to, right? You don't have to. But if you're going to do something very specific, like on Samhain, when we were conjuring up the dead and conjuring up the spirits of the other world, I was walking the path of the circle around my altar that I had set up at the time, right? And I was creating a focus of things inside the circle to be the anchors and the mediums for the spirits, and the stuff outside the circle, right? The rest of the world. Because the only thing that I wanted in this space, connecting the internet to my house to the altar, and therefore the energetic link around the people on the other side of that, watching the videos or watching and participating in that ritual, right? It's not limited to just one location. It can be several locations if you can see them with your mind's eye. The more locations you can see with your mind's eye, the more vast your magic becomes, and the more that you can enact that spell of protection or change, transformation, etc., around remote individuals. What do I mean by remote individuals? It means by people on any place on the planet or the spirits in the planes, right? So that you can meet the spirit in the planes while you're creating a physical ritual. So that way you project your consciousness, you can hear it, you can interact with it, it can interact with you, you get intent, you get the sound, the auditory, the visual, whatever it is that you're doing in a specific context. If it's outside of a specific context and you cannot control the manifestation, that's when you need the medication. That will shut down those capacities of your body that cause that divergence, You want this to be controlled interactions, because if it's not controlled, it's madness. Creating order out of the paradox, creating unification of concept is one of the things that you should be figuring out how to strive for in both what's around you, in your physical body, and your spell, right? In the work itself. Because as you go through and you put your work together, you're going to need to have that very crystal clear. This is the energy that is specifically for this. This is the energy that's specifically for that, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So that way, if anything goes wrong, you can say, well, where did it go wrong? You now have an understanding of what all you accounted for, so that if it went wrong in some way, you can see what you forgot to account for or what you didn't account for. It's to go back and reflect. It's not just, let's cast spells out there in the world for no reason. You divine on it. You see what your spirits have to say, the things that walk with you. The energies of the space, you can read the energies of the person that you're trying to do the spell for. You can do all of those readings. This is why you pay divination fees, is because it takes hours to get all the divination correct. Right? You might, just for somebody who's new to the tarot, they're like, oh, I did a reading and it only took 5 minutes. Like, great for you. You missed a few things. So there's a difference in what professional readers do, like the good ones anyway, and amateur hour when it comes to trying to read for what the outcome of a spell should be, trying to read for the methodology that you should use to put the spell together in the first place. What are the ingredients you're going to need to use specifically? You can get all of these out of readings. And if you can't, you're not reading the right information. Yeah. Dude, oh my God. And if you're just regurgitating shit off the book, out of the books for a client, as far as like why you got that card or why the bones lined up in just the way they did, if you have to refer to a book for that, you missed the importance of the reading. The reading is just a gateway into the world of the spirits that walk with the person, so that you can learn the way that they do it, so that you can learn how the energy will come into their world best. What will those behaviors like? What will be the intelligent energies that surround that individual want to have happen, so that there's a compensation of, this is not in their life, you're bringing it into their life. What form does that need to be when it's in their life? Right? Oh, it's even more than that. The picture on the card denotes an experience. That experience is situational. What are the things in their life that cause that situation to occur or needs to occur in that way? How do you go from, say, for example, pulling the Queen of Swords in one way? You need as a severe case, right? And you need to get them, and the next question that you reshuffle the deck and you reshuffle the cards, including the Queen of Swords, back into the deck, because you need to have this answer. So you need to go from the Queen of Swords to the Hermit. What needs to happen? What change do they need to go from severity into reflection? What's the order of occurrence? How will their life do that if you're using the tarot to read? And so that is the reason why you pay people, because it's a pain in the ass. And generally, that's something that people come to you for, and you get paid to do it because it's a pain in the ass. Because the only thing, and this is from my experience that I say for me and what I do for clients that I take on, etc. So this is only in referring to my shit. You can do it whatever your shit. The divination that you do needs to include the spell to resolve the situation. If you don't want the shit to go down the way the cards are telling you, there is a way to do it so it doesn't go down in the shitty way. You can figure it the fuck out. So that's me and my tirade. Tirade over for now. But, it's the spell's creation, the reading around the spell, knowing what ingredients you have to use, knowing that if you pull this energy out, you need to compensate it with this energy over here. So that way it creates the rhythm, it creates the harmony, it creates the imbalance, fixes itself, right? So if something's going like this, energetically speaking, and you need something to go like this, well, you have to get something to slow its rate. So you have to use yin magic. If it's going like this at a turtle's pace and you need it to be going like this, you need to use yang magic, something yang instead of yin. So you have to be aware of what your cards are telling you. Is it a reverse card? Is it going to be a yin state card, right? Is it going to be a reflective inward process? Or is it a yang outward process? You should be able to interpret this based on the other cards around it to determine these things, right? So it gets really crazy. But what you're doing is you're reading the entire moment. You're doing this in such a way that when you look at something, you have that understanding of this is the situation at hand. This is what I'm going to do with it. This is how it's going to get resolved. And once I set the spell into motion, these energies are already at play. Period. And so if you can't do that because you haven't studied what every single ingredient's going to do, why it's supposed to do it, what its correspondence is, you fucked up. This is why you keep records. This is why you keep detailed records, right? I don't keep as many records anymore because I keep doing the same spells over and over and over for people. So it's not a once-off anymore. I'm to the point in my practice where I can recreate these energies over and over and over again. So I know I can bring this energy to manifestation, right? But how will it affect that individual? That's what I'll do the reading on. Is it a thing that they can handle, right? So here's an example. There was somebody who was conjuring spirits. They fucked up. They got possessed by something. And what do I mean by possessed? That means that their energy got overruled, overridden, horsed, possessed by an energy. They liked doing it way too much. So they, as they were before they got ridden, needed to have a separation. They needed to have their energy change in form from what was now to a previous state. It's like a reset button, right? An exorcism, a really good one, should be a reset button. So it takes them to be exactly what they were before they got possessed, right? So they're not dead, so that there's a separation between what was going on and what needs to happen, right? And so it's like, okay, well, I just ripped the thing out. Like, I just all right, this is the energy. This is the thing. It's going to go in here and, right? Like clenching your butthole with magic. Like, think about that. And you just grab it, right? So you could try. You could try sphincter magic if you wanted to. Like, there's some really funny, commentaries on that and some fucking videos. I don't know. Some TV show made funny reference to that. So that's where that comes from. But you're quite literally pulling threads of energy. You're pulling behaviors, expressions, right? And so in said exorcism for that individual, I'm like, okay, well, I did it in the most unpleasant way possible because I really needed to drive home a point that they shouldn't have been doing that shit in the first place. And I wanted to make sure I got absolutely everything. So I was just like, rip, right? And I warned them that it's going to be really unpleasant. They're going to get nauseous. They're going to get probably vomit. They're going to feel like their insides are crawling out. Like, it's going to be like something was ripped the fuck out of them. And it's going to be a physical sensation. Sure shit. The next day I got an email saying, what were all the effects supposed to be? Oh, yeah, you're going to get vomiting. You're going to get dizzy. You're going to get sick. You're going to get all these things, right? Because it was a vicious, to pull that energy out because I didn't give it a chance to respond. I didn't give it a chance to go into defense mode or try to slither away from me, right? And so by not giving it a chance to respond and just doing the damn spell in the first place, I got full success, right? But what the individual had to go through was a quite unfavorable sickness. It's kind of like a hangover, but without the joy of the drunken night before. So keep in mind that when you're doing these kinds of things, the effects that they're going to have on the individual on the other end, right? You're pulling energy out of energy parts of the body, out of the nadis, out of the collective chakra points where the wheels inside the body are spinning. and their energy is being generated, right? You're pulling energies out of that are not supposed to be there. It's like giving yourself an oil change while the fucking car is running. Didn't stutter. So you have to be careful. And so when you're doing shit with these kinds of anchors, the energy is constantly in motion, always, absolutely always. The more you focus it to slow it down, the more you can make it static and fixed in your spellcraft, means when you release it, it's going to start moving again. It's going to start interacting with the things that you've included. This is why I say use the things for time, use the things for the planets, use the things for the elements, the environment, the behaviors, all of it. Because as that energy moves through those things, like the gears and the clock that I talked about earlier, as it pushes outward from your spell into the world, it's going to change as it takes on those new energies, like a snowball rolling down a hill that goes from a little itty bitty snowball the size of a golf ball to a fucking avalanche if you use all of the ingredients, etc., etc., etc. Right? So that's spellcrafting. The very best kinds of spells compensate for the changes that occur as it moves through the energy, as it enters into the situation that's at hand, using the conditions that you fixed beforehand. So the more that you can fix your situations beforehand, the more that you can go into depth on those arrangements. What is the stone? What is the mineral? Or the metal, sorry. What is the animal component? What is the plant component? What is the tree component? Why do I call plants and trees different? Because the tree holds an ancestor spirit. The plant holds a condition. What was the plant? What is the story the plant is best used in? What is the healing properties of it? What are the baneful properties of it? What's the poison path? What's the chemistry of it? Right? What are the molecules? What is it? What is its planet associated with? Is it Venus? Is it Mars? Is it whatever? Right? What's it going to do? This is what you study. This is why correspondences are so important. This is why those lazy motherfuckers that are just like, oh, I'm just going to, light a candle and that's that. Right? It's like, no, when you're beginning, you should light a candle and that's that. When you get better magic means better correspondence, better understanding of what those correspondences are going to do. So instead of using, say, for example, every single screwdriver in the box, you get one or two screwdrivers you need. You get a pair of pliers. You condense your tools down. You stop using all the extra erroneous bullshit, and you start focusing in on those things that are going to move the needle forward. Your best magics come out of what you draw. What you draw with. Next comes with the anchors. What's fixed? What are the unchanging positions of your magic? What is the arrangement going to look like? What are the same crystals that you use every single time you cast? What are the ingredients that you use every single time you go to Venus, every time you go to Mars, every time you go to Mercury? How do those relate to each other? How do you incorporate all of those together over and over and over again? You stick them in a jar. You use that jar over and over and over again. Then after a certain period of time, it will take on an energy of its own. It will have a behavior. It will have a entity egregore that it's got attached to it. So that way it becomes a gatekeeper. It becomes, through that thing, you can call it by name, and then it triggers the spell because that's energy that it's already programmed to do. The more consciousness and independence you give it, the better off it becomes. And then you forge your own tulpa. You make your own egregores, right? And so doing that allows you to create your own demons, your own energies, your own spirits, your own sets of behaviors that allow you those higher tiers of magic. When you say, call down the spirits, well, you've got your jar full of its ingredients, like the brass vessel of Solomon, and you have its behavior. You know what it's going to do. You know everything that's going to be inside it, and it's going to act on those behaviors because that's what it was made to do. So as you go through and you get these kinds of things done, you have your effect. you have your spell, and they become living principles. And so therefore, all you have to do is name them, and the spells are cast. The name of the spell, the name of the spirit, the name of the God form that you're creating, right? You call it by name, and you don't need to use the ingredients anymore. You just call it by name because you had all the ingredients. You spent the years cultivating those ingredients in private or in public. You've got those jars sitting somewhere on the planet that you know that you've made. You can tap that energy wherever you're at, and you can pull it into your space wherever you're at because it doesn't get limited, right? But it's only through the fixed energy that doesn't change. The stuff that changes, you have to account for in the time of change. So what are the words that you're going to use? What is the ingredients you're going to have to use? What is the changing thing and the fixed thing? How do you get the fixed thing to relate to the changing thing? How do you get those into this? Energy flow, words, meditation, conscious control, gestures, things, motion, movement, whatever it is, fire, throwing an egg against the wall, right? Like hopefully don't, destroy the wall, like with the egg and the stuff inside, like make sure it's not poisonous, etc., etc. But you get the idea. You're trying to create focuses of energy that are so important to get your intent across. All of the other things in creation will create the event at play, right? And so you have the conditions that under the right situations, the types of events that are in stories, like the fairy tales or the fables, can be evoked. Those stories are patterns of people's behavior. Under the right situations, it's my view that you can cause those types of events to come to pass. And by causing those kinds of events to come to pass, you are then calling upon the collective record of that type of event. So your spell becomes part of the collective, and the collective then manifests that effect in the lives of the people that you have anchored into that frequency, that behavior, that reality tunnel, if you will. So it occurs in that way. Readings determine what you're going to need to do that. You want their story to match a narrative that they're trying to create. You're trying to put them into a storybook, into an effect, into an event, into a behavior that they experience or that they have as a result of the energy around them coming together in just the right ways. What is the easiest way that that's going to manifest? What is the story that you're trying to get told? What is the evocation of that story going to look like? That's what your magic is for. That's what you use. That's what the myths of the storybooks, right? We're talking about big magic here because it's event based. It's the very literal concept that Disney put out of like once upon a time, there was this thing that happened. Well, once upon a time, I'm conjuring that. I'm making that event come to pass again now in a new form under these conditions. What are the environmental needs? What are the behavioral needs? What is the archetypal applications of these ingredients so that those things become possible, so that those things become viable, so that presence, that energy, that density of occurrence goes in exactly the right way. So that way nothing is forgotten, nothing is omitted. Everything becomes permissible, right? But everything becomes permissible once you understand that there are correspondences that need to happen in order to create the environments and the energies and the patterns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, my friends, I hope I've clarified like what spells should be able to do. And it doesn't matter where on that spectrum that you are. If you're just at the point where all you can do is use a candle cut with some symbols, rolled in some herbs, and lit on fire, that's great. If you can start thinking about how to use that with other intermediaries that situationally determine what's going to happen with the spirit of the candle. Like the candle is your signifier for the individual. The cards you use, the runes you draw, the ogams you throw, the I Ching you create, the patterns that you develop. It is, man. It really is. As above, so below, as within, so without, right? That is true to every single ingredient. Every ingredient matters. Don't be a lazy magician. Learn your ingredients. Learn your correspondence. Learn how those correspondences behave when they're together. 2 ingredients over here can make for 1 ingredient that you don't have, right? 3 ingredients to 1 ingredient. Like if you don't have 1 ingredient that does one thing that's very specific, you can use 3 or 4 other ingredients to get that same result if you have to. You just have to know which ones they are. You have to know which ones you have the ability to work with, right? Like what's on hand. What's on hand or what do you have to go buy? And if you have to go buy it, what are the sources you have to go through to get it, right? And that's why I really like doing all the high magic stuff that I get up to with all the spell jars and shit like that, is because once I've got these, I don't have to worry about it anymore. I have my spells. I have all of the ingredients that I need to cast magic for other people, right? But if anybody's going to want something I don't already have on hand, then I'm going to have to source it out. Then it's going to have to be a conversation. Then it's going to have to be this next tier of operations. So anyway, we're at the hour mark, my friends. I appreciate you all very much. Thank you for sticking with me today. And I will catch you, Mike, in the comments. Hit me up on Facebook if you got any questions, my friend. Otherwise, stay safe, y'all. And remember, don't be evil. Because that's really important, especially now that you know how to do like all sorts of crazy shit with sorcery. Be safe. And I will see you tomorrow for the workshop. Alrighty, guys. Bye for now.